Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck tech idea. Today we are looking at the biggest bird himself, Maha, its Feathers Knight. It's a 5 mana 6/5 with flying and trample. It has the ward mechanic, so if your opponents want to target it, they have to discard a card. And it has the static stat line of creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1. This evil mono black commander will control the board by keeping all of your opponent's creatures in check, to work towards a typical mono black Wincon, which will require a lot of mana. So let's see how we are going to kill all of those base toughness 1 creatures of your opponents. For example, with Ascendant Evinsar, a 6 mana 3/3 with flying, and other black creatures get +1/+1 and non-black creatures get -1/-1. In the worst case, you will anthem up a few black creatures of your opponents, but for all the other color identities you will definitely wipe all of their creatures away. Knight of Soul's Betrayal, a 4 mana legendary enchantment, and all creatures get -1/-1. Sadly, that will also affect your creatures, but you are still fine with doing that trade as you will wipe all of your opponent's creatures. If there's one opponent that you definitely want to keep in check, you can enchant it with Curse of Death's Hold, a 5 mana enchantment, and creatures enchanted player controls get -1/-1. We also play Kervek the Spiteful, a 4 mana 3/2, and other creatures get -1/-1. If you haven't found one of these enchantments or creatures yet, you have to prevent your opponent's creatures from attacking, which is why you play Caltrops, a 3 mana artifact, and whenever a creature attacks, Caltrops deals 1 damage to it. A repeated board wipe is Pestilence, a 4 mana enchantment, and at the end of each turn, if no creatures are in play, sacrifice Pestilence. For 1 black mana, Pestilence deals 1 damage to each creature and player. As I have mentioned earlier, this is a very mana intensive deck, and due to the fact that we are in mono black, we have to ramp up quickly, which is why we play Scepter of Eternal Glory, a 4 mana legendary artifact, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color, and it can also add 3 mana of any color, but you can only activate it if you control 3 or more lands with the same name, which is easy for us to achieve as we play a bunch of basic swamps. We play Sword of the Animist, a 2 mana legendary artifact, and equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever that creature attacks, you search a library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, which is a great way to help you ramp in a mono black deck. One of the most efficient ways to ramp up is by playing lands that will produce extra mana, which is why we play Cable Stronghold. It taps for 1 colorless, or you can pay 3, tap it, and add 1 black mana for each basic swamp you control. Another land that can help you ramp is Horizon of Progress, a land that taps to pay 1 life and add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. But the relevant thing is that you can pay 3 mana, tap it, and then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Later in the game you can pay 1 mana, tap it, and sacrifice it to draw a card. And since we are playing Cable Stronghold, we also have to play Cable Coffers. For 2 mana and tapping it, you add 1 black for each swamp you control. To discount all of your spells, we definitely have to play Jet Medallion, a 2 mana artifact. Black spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast. Your opponents will hate that you have Maha on the battlefield, so they will definitely try to remove it, which is why we have to play protection like Kaya's Ghost Form, a 1 mana enchantment aura, and you can enchant a creature or planeswalker, and when that permanent would die or would be put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control, which is extremely helpful as it also protects against Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile. Just redirect the spell. Im's Mischief, a 2 mana instant, change the target of target spell with a single target, you lose life equal to that spell's mana value. Of course we play Lightning Greaves, a 2 mana artifact. An equipped creature has haste and shroud, and you can equip it for 0. Swiftfoot Boots, a 2 mana artifact. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste, and you can equip it for 1 generic. We play Not Dead After All, a 1 mana instant. Until end of turn, target creature you control gains. Whenever this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and then create a Wicked Roll token attached to it. A versatile card is Malakia Rebirth, a 1 mana instant. Choose target creature, you lose 2 life. Until end of turn, that creature gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and you can also play it as a land on its backside. Now let's talk about a few of the game finishers that we have in this deck. Pestilence Demon, an 8 mana 7/6 with flying, and for 1 black mana, Pestilence Demon deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. This will allow you to keep the board in check from all of your opponent's creatures, and it's still a 7/6 in the air. We play Sheoldred Whispering One, a 7 mana 6/6 with Swamp Walk, and at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. A really cool demon that has finally found a home is Demon of Dark Schemes, a 6 mana 5/5 with flying, and when it enters, all other creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn, and whenever another creature dies, you get 1 energy. You can pay 3 mana and 4 energy to put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control tapped. A lot of your opponent's creatures will die in this deck, so you will accumulate a lot of energy, and the great thing about Demon of Dark Schemes is that you can target creatures from a graveyard, so if you like one of your opponent's creatures that just died, you can get it back anytime. Villis, Broker of Blood, an 8 mana 8/8 with flying, and for 1 black mana and paying 2 life, target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, which is an instant kill in this deck. And with the target on the stack, you will draw 2 cards, because whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. As creatures are dying, you will drain your opponents with Vein Ripper, a 6 mana 6/5 with flying. It has ward, so your opponents have to sacrifice a creature. And whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. As graveyards are filling up, you will place Sheoldred, a 5 mana 4/5 with Menace, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. For 5 mana, you can exile her, but you can only do that as a sorcery and if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. And with that, you will get an enchantment saga, which is the True Scriptures, which on the first chapter for each opponent destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls. On the second chapter, each opponent has to discard 3 cards and mill 3 cards. And on the third chapter, you will put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. And then you will flicker the True Scriptures back to its front side, so you will get another Sheoldred ETB trigger. And now let's talk about a few typical mono black Wincons. Rotten Mouth Viper, a 6 mana 6/6, and as an additional cost to cast a spell, you may sacrifice any number of non-land permanents. This spell costs 1 generic less to cast for each permanent sacrificed this way, and when it enters or attacks, put a blight counter on it. Then for each blight counter on it, each opponent loses 4 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. If this creature stays unanswered by your opponents, you will definitely win the game with this card, as it is basically a growing torment of hailfire on a creature. You want to pump a lot of mana into Exsanguinate, a 2 black and X sorcery, and each opponent loses X life and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Another spell that you want to pump up with a lot of mana is Torment of Hailfire, a 2 black and X sorcery, and repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. You want to win more? You get it. Sanguine Bond, a 5 mana enchantment, and whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. As a lot of creatures are dying, you can play typical drain effects like Blood Artist or Vein Ripper, which will allow you to drain your opponents out with Sanguine Bond even more. And if we are playing Sanguine Bond, we definitely have to play Exquisite Blood, a 5 mana enchantment, and whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. And as soon as you gain life or an opponent loses life with these 2 enchantments on the battlefield, you will start an infinite loop that can drain all of your opponents out, which is a great combo, especially in a mono black deck, which I can definitely recommend playing. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I would play in Maha. It's Feather's Night. Let me know down in the comments below which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.